Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to another edition of Foundations in Magic. Now, this is going to be something I'm just going to do for the Patreon page, for all my Patreon subscribers. And eventually, I'll probably release it to the general YouTube page. But for right now, I'm going to do this for a month or so here on Patreon, where only subscribers can watch this. And then at some point there, I'll also open up to the general public. Ultimately, what I'm hoping to do is to create just a body of work having to do with primary issues in magic, foundations, if you will. Not so much in telling someone how to practice magic or what tradition they should hold or anything like that. I don't belong to a coven. I never have. I've always been a solitary witch my entire life. And since the time I was a child, I've known that I'm a witch. And so it's throughout my bloodline. If it's in my immediate heritage, no one said anything, but I have my suspicions. But when I went looking for it, I found it on my paternal side, which I didn't know. That's where the royalty is. That's where the Merovingian bloodline, the Plantagenet bloodline, all of that, where you find all of this. And so unfortunately, I guess I've had people on both sides of the equation, witches that have been burned and killed, and then the royalty that did that to them. So I'm related to all of those people. So, it's just kind of one of those weird heritages that sort of, I don't think I could have not been what I am. It just sort of was there from the get-go. It wouldn't have occurred to me, otherwise. And for most of my life, I stayed in stealth mode. I still practiced, did the things I did, had the beliefs I had, but I never really called myself a witch because I thought that it was just too much of a risk. And then at some point, I just decided, oh, the heck with that. And here we are. So anyhow, what I want to talk about today in this edition of Foundations of Magic is working magic during powerful times. And one time that we typically don't work it in, and that's during the void of course moon. And that happens all the time. Just before a moon switches to a different sign, before that happens, you're going to have a period of time where it's void of course, where it's not in aspect, any major aspect anyway, with anything else. And so it might be still in, a particular house sign, like it's still in Libra, it has not yet moved into Scorpio, but it's not interacting any other way. And so they call that being in void of course. And so there's no direction with which to attach to your magic. And a lot of the times when you do things during void of course, I need the one adage is don't ever file for your presidency campaign during a void of course moon because you won't win. Apparently that's a thing. But you could file your taxes during it. But basically, just briefly, when you do moon magic, you're talking, I've got some notes here. But during the new moon, for example, the normal moon times, we'd work magic surrounding new beginnings, healings, rebirth, magics of increase, because it's now waxing. Basically, after that, you're going to start to look in terms of that. When she's in her full or mother phase, magics of an expansive nature could be worked, or any intentions you set on the new moon could then be activated basically or brought to fulfillment. You could around the full moon work the maiden, mother, and crow type of experience where you could do something the day before during maiden phase that mirrors the new moon, and then mother phase is the expansive magics or bringing something you did on the new moon to fulfillment. And then the crone phase, the third day of the moon, the day after the full moon, then you would work, your more personal magics, dark magics, any of that you wanted to do. But then, of course, as she begins to wane, we work magics of decrease. And then shortly before the new moon, you've got a couple of 2-3 days there where she's at her darkest. And that's really the crone phase. So, Hecate types of magic, things like that. Let's see. But now, although but then we also, before I get into the void, of course, I have some other stuff on eclipses, and just as brief, and I just want to talk about that before I go on to the void of courses. I think it would make more sense. Equinoxes and eclipses are special times of power. You ideally on an equinox, either the spring or the fall, you'd want to go out just shortly before that time. And if you could get to some kind of a crossroads, or if not a crossroads, just anywhere on your property where you've got a dividing line, say a tree line, and then you go out into the light. You could go right there. And you could work a type of magic that deals with that type of balance, where you're dealing with a balance of sorts. Day and night are of equal length. If you cast it at the time, and it doesn't mean that you begin the working at the time of the equinox in that minute, but if you know the time of it and you cast your intention at that moment, it holds special power. They're the ending of one phase and the beginning of the next, and so any kind of transitional, think the rune Dagaz, where you're going from one place to another, or Yira, where you're transmuting from one state to another. Any type of transition type of magic can be worked at that time. Let's see, there was something about, did I have something on the eclipses? The same sort of thing though. Eclipse magic is where you have, if it's a lunar eclipse, it's said that during the eclipse time, you experience an entire month's energy. The same with a solar eclipse, only it's bigger. You're experiencing the whole year in that eclipse moment. So you can figure out ways to do that, any type of transition, any type of moving from one phase to the next. Those two types of workings during equinoxes and eclipses are also quite powerful. But, all right, so let's go back to void of course magic. Now, apparently, and I've checked around to see what other witches, what their philosophies are about void of course moon magic, and basically what I can glean from it is it's directionless in a way, even though again it's still technically in that one sign that it's transitioning out of. You're still kind of in this weird void where you're there's nothing really there, and so you have to put your magic there basically, and that's how I see it. But if you're really worried about it, then just don't do it. I mean, it's really simple. Typically, it's similar it has kind of like a Mercury retrograde feeling, or any kind of a retrograde feeling, even though it's not. It's just slowed down to kind of nothingness. And just, and if you're like me, you like to work in that void because you don't have a lot of influence that you're having to contend with, right? So to me, it's a time for influencing, to go within, go into trance state and influence, right? To cast that sort of thing. But, I don't know. You could also, like I said earlier, you could look at void of course magic similar to the dark phase. But honestly, you're going within and you're bringing up your own power to make what you want happen, or to influence the outcome of something. So I don't know. I just view the void time as that. It could also be considered a form of chaos magic in a way, because it's directionless without the witch's influence. So in that, you could consider it a form of chaos magic, maybe. Might be a stretch to do that. But again, you're determining your influence. And you have, basically, it's like a container, a time of container. And you're going to have to check. And one thing that I'm going to do on the Patreon page, I'm going to write this up and I'm going to have it there as well, so you have it to refer to. But in the beginning of it, I have a January void of course schedule for the month. and it shows the beginning time and the ending time. And if you look at it, sometimes it'll begin on one day and it'll end on the same day. But sometimes it lasts a while and it'll go into the next day. And so you may have more time than you realize to work whatever you want to. And within that, you can use the what works at dawn, what works at the 1 o'clock hour, that kind of stuff. You can narrow it. You're working down even further when you have more time. Well, you can do it at any time, but especially when you've got more time to work with. But let's see, where was I? Okay, I already did that because I talked about equinoxes. But for the correspondences used now that you would use within it, if you want to use any at all, if you want to set up your altar, it's going to reflect your working clearly. And if it's a dark sort of working, then if you're wanting to banish, or you're wanting to curse, or you're wanting to heal, or you're wanting to do anything that's a transitional type of a thing, then you could, the simplest one is transmuting negative energy into positive energy. So you could use, if you wanted to use candle magic to do it, you could use a black candle and then maybe a transition candle, maybe a gray one, and then maybe a white candle for purity. And then your working could work that way. Same with crystals on the altar. You're going to want to use the same type of colors on the type of crystals that you use. Malachite is a green one that's wonderful for healing. Rose quartz is another one. You could use hematite or jet or onyx or something like that, or obsidian to denote the negative, or if it's a healing ritual that you're doing, it could be the illness that you're trying to transmute. With that, you could use brown or black, whatever, candles, stones, or both, to denote the disease or the illness, and then you could move it into some pink and some green and some white to move it out of that, if you wanted to do some kind of representative type of magic, and work with it that way. Same with herbs. You can do the same thing with herbs, where you're transmuting one thing to another. But if you're going to do it in the way of, say, a dark magic, of where you're going to do an influence type of a magic, there you're coming into an area of free will issues. But now I've talked about that in before, and I don't necessarily feel. I think the free will begins and ends here with the choice that we make to either serve self or serve others. And I think that that's the true expression of free will. After that, it's a free for all, basically. We can do whatever we want to here. But the free will to truly manifest happens in spirit. That's where your true free will is, where you're making the choices. Once you get here, it becomes the dynamic, the polarity that exists here is more the ego versus spirit, where you're trying to, have spirit inform the process, but ego's like, no, it's playtime. So yeah, but when you start to influence other people, now you're starting to kind of get into the area of the choices that they've made. However, it doesn't mean that you don't work something if someone is truly bothering you and you can't get them to stop in, any other way. And so you might go within, I've done this before, where there's a situation that's happening, that's affecting us, my husband and myself. And I have on a void of course moon. Well, when the moon is void of course, not when on a void of course moon, but when the moon is void of course, I will go into trance and I will, set my intention ahead of time that I need to suggest another option. That's another way of saying I want to influence someone to do something. Now, I always set the caveat that if the person doesn't wish to be influenced this way, because then they can choose not to be. All right. So in a sense, I'm preserving whatever free will we actually have here while the ego's doing its thing. Because when someone is interfering with your life, then there's something wrong there. Okay, there's something wrong with them. There's something that isn't right. Uh, either they're. I mean, for someone to go and it's like a child. Okay, I'll put it in those terms. When a child starts acting out, there's something wrong. They're upset about something. Something isn't right in their life, and so they're acting out. They don't like what's going on. They could simply be hungry. Maybe they haven't had enough sleep. Maybe they've had too much stimulus. But something is out of balance with the child. And so you want to figure that out. What do I have to do? You know, and sometimes it's like shaking keys in front of a baby to distract them. Sometimes it's all you got to do. And if you're in the middle of influencing, if you're setting another path for them and opening it up and encouraging them to see that, maybe that's enough to disrupt that flow. And in my case, in the case I'm talking about, it was. I mean, and it to the point that these people that were pulling stuff actually made life changes. I mean, actually made life changes that removed themselves from the situation completely. And all they needed, and all they likely needed, was the permission to do something else. It's like they're in a position they don't want to be in anymore, you know? And it's like, I'm going to get out of this. But in the meantime, I'm going to upset the apple cart because I'm upset. And they don't realize that they can make a different choice. So sometimes you can work influence magic during void of course time when you've got nothing else influencing. Well, it isn't influencing them either, right? They're a little directionless. So maybe you can give someone a direction. If you've got somebody who's harassing you, or if you've got somebody that maybe isn't harassing you, but it's just every single time you talk to them, it's just this weird conflict. And there's just, it's just who they are. Again, you can go during void of course time and you can set your intention to influence something with them, to maybe influence another kind of interaction with people. It's not that you're cursing them or binding them into any particular action. You're just making suggestions. And I can tell you, when the noise is down, which is what happens during void of course, when the noise is down and the connections are less, this kind of reminds me of when the veil is thinnest at, in around May Day, Beltana, or around Samhain or Halloween. The veil is thinnest and we can access those who have passed on before, right? Same sort of thing here. Think of the void of course as the quiet time where you can either bring things into alignment. Think no interference. You can purify copal if you want to burn some copal in the cauldron on the altar for purification. I would recommend doing that. You could drop also some sage onto the mix for additional purification and sort of a smudging effect, if you will. But the idea behind void of course workings is that the witch is going to fill that space, that empty container, if you will, with her own or his own intention, without the influence of other people or other energies, getting in the way or influences. The moon interacting with anything brings an influence. If you can reduce that, then, the moon is emotional. So it's just kind of the way that is. Now, if you can either go to, and I'm going to put up a page, I guess. I don't really have any more space on the side panel, but what I may do is set a new page. In fact, I think I will, on the blog over at imsteppingsaside.com. I'll set another page that has just current lunar information on it. I do have some of that on the current lunar positions and all of that current astrological positions as well on the blog. And I do need to do that for this month. I need to update when the moon goes where. But the void of course stuff, I don't have there and I don't really have a spot for it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll continue to host that over on the Patreon page. And then I will, here on Patreon, I'll do that. I don't want to say on the Patreon page because this is on the Patreon page. I'll do that, and then then I'll likely also include a void of course section on the blog on a page that shows the different moon phases, and just as a reminder, some moon casting reminders and all of that. I'll put that as there as well, and then we'll just have. In fact, I might go ahead and take the when the moon is in the ingresses, basically. I may take that off the side panel and put that there as well. That way it's just for easy lookup if you don't want to have to go to another site and figure it out. A lot of the times they don't have the ability. It's in UTC and you have to convert. And for me, I'm on the West Coast and I don't want to do that. So I just find out when it is at my time and I create a chart for myself, right? And then I don't have to go look it up every time. So that's what I'll do. I'll create another page here in the coming days and I'll put this stuff there so you have it to refer to for when you want to work magic. And you just have a page you can go to just to refer to it. If you have it in your grimoire, great. But if you look, but mine, everything is scattered everywhere. And so you'd have to try to figure it out. If you want to go and purchase Witch Notes, you could do that. That's my most recent book. It's just a small grimoire, if you will, but it's mostly correspondence. Well, that's all it is. There's sections on divination and herb magic, and there's some stuff on working with herbs as well, medicinally. Because I'm an herbalist and I can't help but put that in there. I have to do that. There's some teas you can look at and all of that. So that's over there on Amazon if you want to check that out. So, you can look at it there, but as far as the current stuff, that's not going to be in the book, how to work with some of this though is, but I don't think that I really went into detail on void of course magics, and I probably should have, and I didn't. So we'll do that here, and again, I'm going to write this up underneath the video over there I think how I have to do that. I think that I'll either have the video separate from the write-up, or maybe I'll put it in the write-up. I don't know. I'll think about it and see how best to do that. What it looks like the best. But I'll have both of them. Yeah, maybe I will. Maybe I'll just embed it because I know I can do that, and then I'll have the write-up below it. But at the same time, you're going to have that void of course chart there to look at, and just to see how you can make your own. Also, and I'll include a link to it maybe, or no, I won't need to because I'll have the link to the blog page where it's going to be. So that will come up maybe in a couple of days, or maybe later on today if I can finish it in time. But there's also, if you have an iPad or an iPhone or something, you can find the iLuna app. It's just a small I and then capital LUNA. That's over at the App Store, and that's a great resource to find out where the moon is, and it shows void of course information. There's also another moon app that shows void of course information. But over at Lunarium, and then they changed, okay? So it's lunarium.co/calendar. You can find the void of course information there. Something about Google changed some stuff or something, I don't know, and they had to update their site. So go over to Lunarium. If you go to Lunarium and you search for it and then you click on it, you might get a page that says, well, no, we have to go here now. So click on that one and go there, and you'll see that. And they've got a lot of information there, so you can find out when it is there as well. So again, if your tradition prohibits it, then fine, follow your tradition. But if you want to do something a little different, try it, see how you like it. If you're in a coven, take back what you learned to the coven, and who knows, maybe you'll change the viewpoint there. Maybe you can all find a way, if you're not already, to work within this time. And it's cool. So anyhow. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again on this. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. I think at one point I was going to talk about making charm bags, so maybe that's the next one. Charm bags and mojo bags, we can all use those, can't we? So, in any event, thanks so much for watching. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.